This happened a few years ago. I was 35 and working as a freelance journalist. I thought a road trip would be good for me. I wanted to explore some human interest stories. I didn't expect the things I would encounter. I drove along back roads that were quiet and empty. I went from bustling cities to small towns. The roads felt endless. One night, I pulled into a diner. The neon lights flickered. The place looked run down, but I was hungry. The smell of grease filled the air. I ordered a burger and sat down. The waitress seemed distant. She didn't make eye contact when she took my order. That felt odd, but I shrugged it off. I waited for my food, and I could hear a conversation nearby. A lone customer was talking to the staff in soft voices. They kept glancing over their shoulders. I caught bits and pieces of their discussion. They mentioned disappearances. My heart started to race. I didn't know if I imagined it or if something was really wrong. When my food arrived, I ate quickly. I wanted to leave. After I finished, I felt uneasy as I walked out. The night felt heavier as I got back on the road. Each hour blurred together. I found a motel later that night. It was old and worn, but better than sleeping in my car. I settled into my room. The light above me flickered and buzzed. The next morning, I saw something on the nightstand. A small note was there, scribbled in a shaky hand. "You shouldn't be here." It chilled me to the bone. I looked around, but no one was there. Was it a prank? I felt dread twisting in my stomach. As I drove on, I noticed figures lurking in the distance. They seemed to appear and vanish behind the trees. I told myself it was nothing, but I felt eyes on me. I couldn't shake the feeling. Later, my phone rang. The line was filled with static, and I couldn't understand the voice. Fear washed over me. I pulled over to the side of the road, hands shaking. "Leave," I thought I heard it say, but I couldn't be sure. Each strange encounter pushed my anxiety higher. It felt like I entered a bad dream. I started to doubt my own mind. Those unsettling moments began to pile up. Years have passed, but I can't forget those events. I keep thinking about that diner, the note, the phone call. It haunts me. I wonder what I stumbled into, or if I simply lost my grip on reality. On quiet nights, I almost hear a voice whisper, "Why didn't you leave?" I look around, but nobody is there. The questions linger, unanswered and waiting. The days turned into weeks, but the unease from that trip never left me. I tried to move on, but each time I closed my eyes, I saw shadows flitting between the trees. The memory of the diner and the chilling note haunted me. I became obsessed. I had to know what happened in that small town. So, I went back. Driving the same back roads felt like stepping into a nightmare. It took hours, but I finally turned onto that familiar street. The diner was still there, its neon flickering weakly against the evening sky.
My heart raced, my palms sweaty on the wheel. I was only a few feet away from the place where everything changed. I parked and sat for a moment, collecting myself. The diner looked emptier this time. Through the grimy window, I saw the same waitress from before. She was cleaning a table, her face tired and drawn. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled. She glanced up, but quickly looked away. I approached the counter, feeling every pair of eyes in the room on my back. I ordered coffee. No food this time. I needed clarity more than nourishment. Sipping slowly, I strained to hear any whispers, any word of the disappearances. Instead, conversations shifted to hushed tones as I arrived, like I was an unwelcome intrusion. I felt exposed, like I was standing under a spotlight while the rest of the room faded into darkness. Then something caught my eye. A newspaper clipping was pinned to a bulletin board near the restrooms. I stood to get a closer look. The headline read, Local woman disappears. Townsfolk worry. The article was old, but the date was scrawled in red ink, months after my visit. The waitress watched me from the corner of her eye. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear. Her warning sent a jolt through me. I dropped my cup, spilling coffee across the floor. Suddenly, a man behind me stood up. "You don't belong here," he shouted. The diner fell silent. Their eyes were on me, regarding me as if I were the ghost of someone long gone. The old familiar dread returned, tight and suffocating. I knew I had to get out. I made for the door, weaving through the tables. The clink of cutlery stopped as I passed. Outside, panic surged. I sprinted to my car, hands trembling as I fumbled with the keys. That's when I saw it, a figure in the trees across the street. Only for a moment, a flash of a pale face staring right at me. Fear coursed through me as I started the engine and peeled out of the parking lot. I didn't look back, but I felt those eyes burning in the rear view. Were they watching me leave? Did they know something I didn't? The questions swirled in my mind, another layer of confusion added to my fear. I drove as fast as I could, heart pounding in rhythm with the revving engine. But I learned something on that trip. Not all roads lead to safety. Some lead to darkness. What would it take to uncover the truth? The thought nagged at me. With each passing mile, I wondered what I might find if I turned around again. I could hear the whispers calling me back. The road blurred past me, a dark ribbon of asphalt under a blanket of night. I didn't stop driving until exhaustion kicked in, pulling me into a cheap motel room far from that haunted diner. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering sporadically. After what I went through, sleep seemed impossible.
My dreams twisted into nightmares, the diner replaying over and over. The waitress's warning echoed, and that pale face returned with chilling clarity, lingering and watching me. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The next morning, I refused to leave without answers. I grabbed a greasy breakfast from a diner a few miles away, the coffee strong enough to push through last night's fears. I picked up my phone and searched for any articles or reports about the disappearances from the town. Nothing. It was as if they were trying to bury the truth. Feeling restless, I took a drive down the abandoned back roads that had led me there. I remembered the route clearly. Every turn brought fresh memories, a sick mix of unease and resolve. I felt compelled to investigate, to understand why those people turned against me, why their faces looked haunted like the shadows lurking in the trees. As I parked near the diner that morning, I noticed a small weathered sign at a nearby gas station. Missing persons, 3. My heart raced. Closer inspection revealed photos of women, ages and descriptions scrawled underneath. One photo sent a cold chill through me. It was the same woman from the article in the diner, a look of fear frozen on her face. I was about to walk inside the gas station when the bell above the door jingled. A middle-aged man stood in the doorway, blocking my path. His eyes were sharp, narrowing as he assessed me. "Not safe here, friend," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Best get back in your car." I hesitated, my thoughts racing. What did he know? "I'm just looking for information about the missing women," I finally responded. A shadow flicked across his face, and his expression shifted. "You don't know what you're asking for," he warned, glancing back at the diner. "You need to leave this place." But there was a fire in me now, stoked by desperation. "Why?" I pressed. "What happened to them?" His gaze turned cold, and the fear slipped back into the air. "You also don't want to know that," he replied, stepping aside as if to let me pass. Instead, I took a step back, shocked by the sudden tension. My heart pounded. I turned toward my car,
adrenaline coursing through me. This was a town with secrets, and I could feel them clawing at me to stay. The moment I reached my door, I heard a voice call from behind me. "Wait!" It was the waitress. The same tired face had turned fresh with urgency. She stood at the edge of the gas station lot, breathless. "Don't go yet," she pleaded. "There's something you need to know." Before I could respond, the air trembled with a low rumble. A vehicle skidded to a halt behind me. I turned, instinct screaming. Someone was in the house, and they weren't happy to see me. The diner loomed in the distance, and I felt the weight of every glance it held. My pulse quickened. What was about to happen next? I whipped around, my heart racing, as I watched the ominous figure emerge from the vehicle.
It was a large, black truck, and the driver stepped out with a menacing confidence. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but the waitress's presence anchored me. "Get back inside," the man from the gas station barked. His voice was rough, almost primal with urgency. The air buzzed with a tension I couldn't ignore. My feet moved instinctively toward the waitress, her pleading expression urging me to stay. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "He works for them," she said, glancing nervously at the man as he approached, each step heavy and deliberate. "You shouldn't have come back." Before I could process her words, the man in the truck shouted, "I told you, leave it be!" His voice echoed down the road, a low threat that vibrated in my bones. "Listen," the waitress said, stepping closer to me. "You're too far in. You've seen too much. They can't find out you're asking questions." I felt the weight of those words. Whatever dark secret this town harbored, I had stumbled right into its heart. "But I need to know what happened to them," I insisted, feeling desperation rising in my chest. The waitress shook her head, eyes wide with fear. "You can't help them. Just run." Then I saw it, the man from the truck, fuming and relentless. He was now just a few feet away, his hands curled into fists. I could feel his anger radiating. It was palpable, a physical force that threatened to crush me. "Time's up," he growled. "You need to get out of here, or you'll end up like them." I turned back to the waitress, confusion mingling with terror. "Please, help me understand." "Get in the truck and go," she insisted. "There's something wrong in that diner. If they see you, it won't end well. Just trust me." But before I could decide, the man lunged forward. "You won't keep asking questions here," he yelled, closing the distance between us. With instinct taking over, I spun around and sprinted for my car. My fingers fumbled with the keys as adrenaline surged. I could hear the muffled curses behind me, footsteps chasing in tandem with panic. I slammed the door, heart pounding in my throat, and threw the car into gear. The tires screeched as I accelerated away from the gas station. But just as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I caught sight of the waitress standing frozen, her face a mix of fear and resolve. I can't leave her, I thought, but the thought of looking back also terrified me. I forced myself to focus on the road ahead, the darkness closing in around me. I recalled the sign, the missing women haunting me. My mind raced as I sped away. I didn't understand how deep this rabbit hole went, but it was clear. The diner wasn't just a place of nightmares. Something far worse lurked in the shadows. Then, a flash of movement in the corner of my eye made me jump. I glanced to my right and saw a figure emerging from the trees. Someone familiar, someone I thought I would never see again. My heart dropped. It was one of the missing women.
She was there, stumbling out from the woods and looking directly at me. Desperation filled her eyes as she raised a hand, pleading for me to stop. But as I stood on the brake, I realized it might be too late. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the asphalt. My heart raced as I took in the sight of her. It was Lisa, a woman I'd seen on those missing posters. I couldn't believe she was right there, alive. But her wild eyes and disheveled appearance told a different story. "Help me," she cried, voice shaking as she stumbled toward my car. "Please, you have to get me out of here." But the voice in my head screamed at me to drive. What if this was a trap? What if those men from the truck were watching? Still, as I looked into her eyes, I felt her fear. Did I really have a choice? "Get in!" I shouted, glancing around as I unlocked the door. The branchy silhouette of the woods loomed behind her. I felt the weight of the decision as she darted forward, throwing the door open. "I thought they'd never let me go," she gasped as she buckled up. There was a frantic urgency in her voice. "They know you're here now. We have to move." Before I could process her words, I slammed the car into gear and tore down the road. My mind raced. "What happened to you? Where have you been?" But I couldn't speak. The words lodged in my throat. "They took me to the diner," she said, her voice barely a whisper now. "It's worse than you can imagine. They're doing things to people, things I can't explain." A chill ran through me, and my grip tightened on the steering wheel. "But I thought, they're not just missing, they're changed," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "You have to get out of this town before it's too late. You're in danger." "No, I need to know," I insisted, desperation creeping in. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something deep and dark. "Why were you taken? What does it mean?" But Lisa was shaking her head, her fear palpable. "You don't want to know. You need to believe me. Just drive." As I pushed the pedal to the floor, I could see headlights in my rearview mirror. The black truck was following us. My stomach dropped. "They're coming after us." "Turn here," she screamed, pointing frantically down a narrow side road, barely visible in the dim light. I swerved, tires skidding as I took the turn. The headlights seemed to grow closer. My heart hammered in my chest. I couldn't let them catch us. The road became rougher, surrounded by trees that closed in like a cage. I felt Lisa's eyes on me, filled with both fear and urgency. Then everything went dark. The headlights disappeared as we entered a stretch of thick woods with no light and no sign of civilization. I kept driving, adrenaline surging through me. Would we lose them? But just as I began to breathe a little easier, the engine sputtered, then began to cough like a dying animal. "No, no, no," I muttered, panic rising. "Please, not now."
The car jolted, then went silent. "I think we're out of gas," I groaned, glancing at Lisa. Her face fell. She was terrified. "What do we do?" she breathed, looking past me at the dark trees lining the road. I opened my mouth to answer, but then I heard it, a rustling from the surrounding woods. Something was coming, and it wasn't just my imagination. Before I could react, a loud thumping echoed, closing in around us. I grasped the steering wheel, waiting for whatever was hidden in the dark to reveal itself. I held my breath, frozen in the driver's seat. The thumping grew louder, heavy footsteps crashing through the underbrush. I glanced at Lisa. Her eyes were wide, reflecting fear and something else I couldn't pinpoint. "We need to get out of here," I whispered, but my voice barely reached her. She nodded, glancing around as if to gauge the forest's intentions. Suddenly, a shadow leaped into view, tall, broad, and moving with an unsettling grace. It paused just at the edge of the trees, illuminated by our dim headlights. I could barely make out its features, an elongated face, hollow eyes, and a smile that didn't seem to belong on a human being. And then it took a step forward. My heart pounded in my chest. The thing couldn't be real. It felt like a scene pulled straight from a nightmare, but I was wide awake. "Drive!" Lisa screamed, her voice galvanized by fear.
Somehow that snapped me back to reality. With shaking hands, I turned the ignition, but nothing happened. The engine refused to respond, mocking my desperation. The thing stepped closer, and I could see the glistening edges of what looked like sharpened teeth. "Please, no," I murmured, panic surging. "Get out!" Lisa yelled, flinging open her door. It creaked loudly, echoing through the quiet woods. "We have to run!" My instincts screamed at me to follow, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I couldn't let it get closer. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw two bright beams cutting through the darkness. The headlights of the truck. They were here. "Now, go!" Lisa urged, and I surged into action, throwing my door open. I stumbled out, and we took off into the trees, the underbrush tearing at our clothes and skin. We ran with no direction, just the need to escape driving us forward. I could hear a low growl behind us, the presence of the creature looming in the shadows like a predator. "Where are we going?" I gasped, trying to keep pace with Lisa. "Just keep moving. We have to find a way out," she shouted over her shoulder. The darkness consumed us. I lost sight of the truck's lights, but the fear of being found chased us deeper into the woods. Each snap of a twig made me jump, every rustle a reminder that we were being hunted. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted a flicker of light through the trees. Hope surged, and I pushed forward. But as we broke into a small clearing, my heart sank. It was an old, abandoned cabin, windows shattered, doors hanging off their hinges.
"That's our only option," Lisa said breathlessly. The guttural growl echoed nearby, sending chills down my spine. "Do you think it's safe?" "No time to think," she replied, urgency cutting through her fear. We rushed toward the cabin, slipping inside just as the creature emerged from the trees, its eyes locking on us. Inside, the air was stagnant, and my pulse raced in the silence. We huddled behind a broken counter, waiting. I could hear the creature prowling outside, and my focus turned to the window. That's when I saw it. A flash of movement. More shadows in the darkness, and they weren't alone. "We're not the only ones," I whispered, fear gripping me as I saw more figures gathering just outside, their features blurred but unmistakably watching us. What had we stumbled into? The shadows shifted, their shapes indistinct but filled with a sinister energy. My heart raced, matching the thumping of footsteps outside. I glanced at Lisa, her eyes wide with terror. "What are they?" I murmured, hoping the words would not leave my lips. "I don't know, but I don't want to find out," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. We huddled closer, the broken counter offering little protection from the unknown. The growl outside faded momentarily, replaced by a low, unsettling chant that seeped through the walls, echoing in our ears. "What is that?" I asked, straining to make sense of it. They seem to be communicating," Lisa stuttered, her breaths shallow. "We have to stay quiet." I focused on the movement outside. The figures were circling the cabin, their postures unnatural, as if something twisted was animating them. I dared a glance through a shattered window. They were far from human, their limbs distorting in ways that made my stomach churn. I turned back to Lisa. "If they get inside?" Her expression hardened. "We can't let that happen." I needed to think. We couldn't stay here, but going outside was an invitation to disaster. "Maybe there are supplies in here, something we can use to defend ourselves," I said, trying to sound steadier than I felt. Lisa nodded, her gaze darting around the cabin. I slowly rose to my feet and peered behind the counter. Dust and debris flew in the air, but I spotted a rusty crowbar barely sticking out from under a loose floorboard. Grabbing it, I felt a rush of confidence. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Look for anything else," I urged, lifting the crowbar like it was a lifeline. Lisa began rummaging through a nearby collapsed bookshelf. I could hear the desperate thud of her heart mirroring my own. The voices outside surged in intensity, a chaotic chorus of whispers and growls. Whatever they were, they seemed hungry. Just then, the front door shuddered violently, rattling on its hinges. I froze, sparking panic within me. How much longer before they figured out that we were inside? "We need to barricade the door," Lisa cried, urgency in her eyes.
We scrambled, dragging shelves and furniture toward the entrance. The door rattled again, slamming against the makeshift barrier. I felt my insides twist as splinters flew. The chant outside intensified, drawing closer. Then everything fell silent. A sudden chill washed over me, like the air itself held its breath. I pressed my ear to the door, listening for signs of movement. Why had they stopped? Was this part of some twisted game they played? The silence grew unbearable, and I glanced at Lisa. What if they're planning something? Before I could finish, the door splintered with a horrifying crack. I helped Lisa scoot further back against the wall as the shadows outside formed an unholy mass at the entrance. Their eyes glimmered, revealing a flicker of malicious intent. "I don't think they want to just talk," Lisa said, visibly shaking. Then, without warning, the door burst open, crashes of wood and chaos unleashing into the air. A figure stepped through, its elongated body blocking whatever light remained. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Lisa's arm and forcing her toward the back of the cabin. As we sprinted deeper into the darkness, I realized this wasn't just our fight for survival. It felt like stepping into a trap. But there was no chance to think too long. A low growl rolled through the air behind us, chasing our every step, promising that whatever we had stumbled into was far worse than we'd imagined. And now, we had no choice but to confront it. We tore through the back room, trying to put as much distance as possible between us and the nightmare looming behind us. The space was claustrophobic, filled with rusted tools and empty, rotting crates that cast odd shadows against the walls. I shoved a heavy crate against a window, hoping it would buy us a few precious moments. "Over here," Lisa called out, her voice rising over the sound of our pounding hearts. She had found a doorway leading to what looked like a cellar. There might be a way out down here. I hesitated. The dark, musty air wafting up from the cellar sent chills down my spine. But there was no time to waste. I grabbed her hand and we rushed down the narrow stairs, careful not to trip in the dark. The cellar was colder than the rest of the cabin, the air thick with the smell of damp earth. We reached the bottom and quickly scanned the area. Old barrels lined the walls, and a few rusting chains dangled from hooks above us. I held the crowbar tight, feeling as though it was our only lifeline left. "Do you think they can follow us down here?" Lisa whispered, her anxiety palpable. "I don't know," I said, straining to hear any signs of the creatures, "but we need to stay quiet." We crouched behind a stack of crates, our breaths shallow. Time seemed to stretch, every creak of the floorboards above us sending panic racing through my veins. I was about to suggest we search for a possible escape route when I noticed something odd in the corner of the cellar, a faint glowing light.
"What is that?" Lisa asked, her brow furrowing. I don't know." The light flickered, drawing me closer. I motioned for Lisa to stay behind while I crept toward it. As I got nearer, I realized it emanated from a small, old lantern, one that had been turned on, despite everything else down here being forgotten and dusty. Suddenly, the walls seemed to hum with an odd energy, vibrating in sync with the light. I felt a strange pull, as if the lantern was somehow beckoning me closer. "Don't touch it," Lisa called, her voice sounding distant, as if she were far away. But I was drawn in, my fingers grazing the cool metal. The moment I made contact, the ground shook and I staggered back, almost losing my balance. A burst of energy shot through me, swirling in chaos. I caught a glimpse of visions, shadowy forms overlapping with mine, echoes of those who had come before.
"Jack!" Lisa screamed, her voice breaking through the attack on my senses. "Get away from it!" I jerked back, the lantern flickering violently before it went dim, plunging us into darkness. My heart raced at the intensity of what I had felt. I saw something," I stammered. "Like what?" she asked urgently, moving closer. "I don't know. Figures. Shadows. They weren't just outside. They were trapped here." Lisa's eyes widened. "We have to get out now. If they've been waiting here, we don't know what they'll do to us." Our moment of hesitation had allowed the creatures above to pick up our scent again. A loud crash echoed from the cabin, followed by guttural growls that burrowed into my soul. We couldn't stay here. I would not let whatever horrors haunted the lantern get to us. "Back up the stairs," I shouted. I bolted for the stairs, the weight of the creature's arrival fueling my steps. As I burst into the main room, I quickly scanned for any exit. The front door was still ajar, but who knew what awaited us outside? Lisa followed closely, and I glanced back once to see the cellar protests behind us, shadows clawing at the edges of light. Then, before I could fully process it, something moved in front of us, blocking our only way out. "My God!" I breathed, staring into the soulless eyes of another shadow. We had angered whatever lurked in the corners of this place. Now it was here, ready to confront us. The creature was massive, blocking our only escape. Its form twisted, a haze of darkness that absorbed the light around it. I couldn't see its features clearly, but I felt the weight of its gaze, a piercing chill that seeped into my bones. "Jack, what do we do?" Lisa whispered, backing up slightly. I felt panic rising. "We can't stay here. We need a plan." The darkness seemed to pulse with its own energy, and I could hear strange whispers echoing around us, like voices just out of reach. I glanced at the side of the room, hoping for something, anything that could help us escape. My eyes fell on an old, rusted pipe running along the wall. It looked sturdy.
"Maybe we could block it somehow," I whispered, squinting to get a clearer look at the creature. It hadn't moved yet, just watching us, waiting. "Are you crazy?" Lisa said, her voice rising with panic. "It could kill us in a second." But I wasn't thinking clearly. "I need to distract it. You find a way out." "No, we stick together," she insisted, her eyes wide. That's when the creature lunged. The shadows around it twisted and writhed, the air filled with an icy dread. I swung the crowbar out instinctively, but it passed right through the air where the creature had been. "It's like it's not even really there," I yelled, the panic spilling over. Lisa's eyes darted around the room, and then she spotted the window. "That!" she exclaimed, pointing. "If we can get to that window, we might—" Before she could finish, the shadow surged toward us. I heard a deep growl, almost like a warning. I raised the crowbar again, but my grip trembled. It felt impossible to fight something that seemed to exist in both the physical and the spectral. "Now!" I shouted, grabbing Lisa's arm and yanking her toward the window. We ran past the creature, pushing our way through the darkness. The cold air sliced through us, sending chills down my spine. As I reached the window, I threw the crowbar toward the creature, creating a loud clatter, hoping to distract it long enough for us to escape. Lisa scrambled onto the windowsill first. I followed closely, our breaths hitching as we prepared to leap. But just as we did, I heard the unmistakable sound of something tearing through the air behind us, a scream that echoed with pure malice. I didn't look back. We jumped out, the world outside a blur of trees and darkness. We landed hard on the ground, pain jolting through my legs. I rolled to my side and looked up, breathless, as I saw the outline of the cabin against the dark sky. Then everything went quiet. There were no growls, no whispers, just the sound of our heavy breathing. I glanced at Lisa. Her eyes were wide, scanning the area. "Did we lose it?" "I don't know," I stammered, pushing myself up. The air felt thick,
as if we were still somehow tethered to whatever had chased us. We stepped away from the cabin, hearts pounding, but my instinct screamed that we weren't out of danger yet. That's when I noticed something glinting in the grass. I bent down to pick it up, revealing a small silver locket, cold to the touch, engraved with the same mysterious symbols I'd seen on the lantern. I looked at Lisa, fear dripping from my words. What if this belongs to one of the shadows? Before she could reply, an ear-splitting shriek erupted from the cabin, sending us back into full panic. We started running, heartbeats matching the frantic rhythm of our footsteps. The clearing felt smaller, trees looming over us like gnarled fingers reaching out to pull us back. The light from the cabin dimmed behind us, but we didn't dare look back.
We had to escape whatever darkness that lurked there. "Where do we go?" Lisa shouted, breathless, stumbling slightly on uneven ground. I had no real answer, just pure instinct guiding my steps deeper into the woods. "Keep moving," I called back, feeling the creeping sensation of eyes on our backs, the foreboding presence trailing us from the shadows. We veered off the trail, branches scratching at our arms, but we didn't stop, didn't slow down. Each glance back increased my fear. The echoing scream had transformed into an enraged growl, as if the shadows had found their hope of reclaiming us. Panic rose as I realized we might not make it. We needed to make a choice. Then, out of the underbrush, I spotted it, a narrow path leading away from the clearing, a faint hint of moonlight breaking through. "This way!" I shouted, grabbing Lisa's hand and pulling her toward the light. We sprinted down the path, the ground softening under our feet until it opened up into a small glade. For a moment, everything fell silent, the air filled with a strange serenity, unspoiled by the terror that had shadowed us until now. I bent over, trying to catch my breath. Lisa stood close, her face pale. "What if it comes back?" she whispered. I shook my head, still holding the locket tightly. "I don't know, but we need to rest. We can't keep running forever." She nodded reluctantly, but the unease lingered as we quietly scanned the edges of the glade. I gently opened the locket to check for clues and revealed the contents inside. A small photo and a folded piece of paper slipped out, catching the moonlight. "Read it," Lisa urged, peering over my shoulder. I unfolded the note, the hurried script barely legible. "If you find this, run. Find the light before it finds you." The words sent a shiver down my spine. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," she replied, gripping my arm. "We need to figure this out. What does any of this have to do with those missing women?" I wish I knew. Why were they taken? What is inside that diner? Each question felt like a stone lodged in my throat, heavy and painful, but the light in the glade began to flicker, casting uneasy shadows on the ground. We exchanged terrified glances. "It's back," I whispered, the weight of dread pressing again. Lisa turned, searching the edges of the glade for any signs. A low growl emerged once more, vibrating through the air, and instinct kicked in. "We have to climb!" I pointed toward the looming tree branches above us, offering some sort of refuge. We scrambled up, fingers scratching against rough bark, the sound of heavy footsteps pounding the ground beneath us. I pulled Lisa up just as a whispering wind rustled through the leaves, carrying with it echoes that reverberated deep in our bones. But the darkness below didn't stop. It swirled like a storm, hungry for our terror. I held on tightly to Lisa, fear intertwined with a sense of urgency. What if we can't get out? "Just keep going," she urged, her determination shining through our shared dread. Higher we climbed, reaching a sturdy branch that felt steady enough to support us. Then, in the moonlight, we saw them, the shadows creeping to the base of the tree, their shapes contorting in unnatural ways. Faces flickered in and out like old film reels, each one echoing a silent scream. Those missing women, trapped in whatever darkness held them, anchored us to our own dread. "Jack, look!" Lisa pointed down, and I followed her gaze. A beam of light filtered through the trees. It was weak, but shone clearly in the night. "Could that be the way out?" I asked, my heart racing again. "I think—" she started, but the shadows grew restless beneath us. The low growl turned into distorted sounds, pulsing with rage. An undertone of urgency from all those lost souls merged into one. "It's now or never!" I shouted, releasing my grip on the branch as I hopped down, landing just outside the glade. The shadows recoiled momentarily, like oil in water, revealing the opening ahead. "Come on!" I shouted for Lisa, but the instant regret flooded me as I turned back to reach for her. The shadows surged, darkness billowing, blocking the light's path behind me. "Jack!" she screamed, panic clawing in her voice as she swayed precariously on the branch. I felt the weight of the decision pressing down, fear piercing through each second. "Jump! I'll catch you!" I yelled, my heart pounding furiously. No time to think, just an instinct to save her somehow. With every ounce of strength she leapt from the branch, and I reached out, catching her just as the shadows lunged forward, grasping at her legs. The pain of their touch seared into my flesh, but I powered through, pulling her toward the light that grew clearer by the second. We sprinted ahead, heartbeats thundering in unison, driven by each moment of realization that we had to escape this cycle of terror. As we reached the clearing bathed in moonlight, I risked a glance back. The shadows seemed hesitant at the threshold, as though the light was a barrier they couldn't overcome. But for how long would it hold? "Keep moving," Lisa urged, pulling me forward. We hazily ran toward sanctuary, the ominous presence whispering behind us as we broke free into a world that felt achingly familiar and terrifyingly surreal. But as we dashed into an open road, gasping for life, something lingered in my mind, a question bubbling beneath the surface. If we escaped, what did we truly leave behind? I glanced at the locket in my hand. I don't know if I'll ever get answers. I only knew one thing. The darkness, whatever it was, wouldn't let go that easily. And that made the night stretch into an eternity of uncertainty, a haunting reminder of the shadows waiting just outside the light. As dawn broke, painting the sky with shades of uncertainty, we drove further, the world unseen in my rear view, reminding me that some stories never truly end. They only shift, lingering on the edges of our memory, where questions remain unanswered.